The Navy SEALs are one of the highest performing organizations on the planet, and a former Navy SEAL was asked, who makes it through BUDS? Who makes it through the selection process to become a SEAL? And he said, I can't tell you who gets through, who makes it, but I can tell you the kind of people who don't make it. He said the star college athletes that never have been really tested to the core of their being, none of them make it through. He said the preening leaders who like to delegate everything, none of them make it through. He said the big tough guys that come in with huge muscles, covered in tattoos, who want to prove to everyone how tough they are, none of them make it through. He said some of the guys that make it through are skinny and scrawny. He said some of the guys who make it through, you will see them shivering out of fear. He said, but every single one of them who makes it through, when they're emotionally exhausted, when they're physically exhausted, some way, somehow, they're able to dig down deep inside themselves to find the energy to help the person next to them. Service. Service. Giving to another, having their back, is what makes the highest performing teams in the world. Not their strength and not their intelligence. It's their willingness to be there for each other.
So again, warm welcome from my side. I'm the founder here at V5 Digital, and we are pleased to have Nadia with us today, talking about emotional intelligence in the workplace. So Nadia, maybe you want to say one or two words before we do a fuller introduction of you just now.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's really an honor and a privilege to be with you today to speak about a subject that might be unusual in this forum, but very important. And I'm looking forward to sharing more research and advocating for why we need to be more mindful about mental wellness and emotional intelligence at work.
Fantastic. Yes, maybe just to make the connection to V5 Digital. So normally in our world, we talk a lot about DQ, digital quotient. But yeah, today we thought, let's ramp it up a bit and talk about kind of, in our world, the softer side of things, EQ. So again, a very warm welcome to Nadia and everybody around the globe that can join us this afternoon. So just quickly on the agenda, so we should be done by about 5 minutes to 1 local time. And there's also going to be a Q&A coming up later, so get your questions ready for that. Quickly about who's V5 Digital. Those that have never heard about us, we solve business challenges by providing digital marketing strategy and tech solutions to help our customers and clients reach and excite their customers and consumers. We are passionate about a lot of things, and today is not really a talk about us, but those of you that are interested, you're more than welcome to reach out to us and to inquire about the awesome digital marketing and digital transformation services which we do offer here at V5 Digital. Quickly, a word or two on our technology partners with whom this webinar series would not have been possible. So we are a proud Rocket Seed partner. That's our email branding solution. We are an equally proud Salesforce partner since 2020, the world's #1 CRM. Last but not least, we are also a proud SharpSpring partner, an end-to-end CRM and business growth platform. But before we start, just a bit of housekeeping. So please use the Q&A to ask any kind of questions. Again, apologies for the chat, but it's finally working, and it's great to have so many people online and so many comments coming in, which is fantastic. And before we really get going, stand a chance to win a V5 Digital Diary. So all you need to do is tweet with the hashtag V5Africa, and one lucky delegate can walk away with a Moleskine type diary. Plus, Nadia is also offering a 1-hour mindfulness session for your company or your social circle, maximum 10 people. That you can win either by also tweeting, or Jürgen, who's our co-host today, he will send you the link in the chat so that you can just complete that one. And with that, Nadia will, I would say by the end of the week, choose then one lucky person to win that, to win the mindfulness session. So with that, again, a warm welcome to Nadia. You might have seen her amazing resume, CV, and what actually connects Nadia and I, that we studied at some of the same institutions, for instance, at CPUT in Cape Town. at Stellenbosch Business School and also at UCT. But Nadia went on and on and on. She also studied, amongst others, at I think it's Dom Combraçao in Brazil, which I've been to Brazil, but not to that particular school. And she also did electives, amongst others, at the University of Tübingen and also at Frankfurt Business School. So I think, believe me, Nadia is more than capable of running our session today. And with that, just quickly what you will learn from this webinar. And I'm going to essentially switch off my slides now and going to start with the first poll. And if you can just quickly participate, that would be amazing. So I'm going to launch the first poll, and then Nadia will essentially from now on take over and talk to the poll answers, and then essentially start with her slides.
Okay, thanks, Aman. That was a very generous introduction. So let's kick off with a few poll questions. You can go ahead and answer. First one is emotional intelligence a soft skill?
Fantastic. I see the answers are streaming in.
Okay,
let's give it a few more seconds. There seems to be a clear winner in terms of the answer, although I'm not sure if there's supposed to be a winning answer. But Nadia will uncover that just now.
Okay,
So
I'm curious.
I'm going to end the poll on this one. If you've missed on this poll, don't stress. There are quite a few more. So I'll quickly share the results.
Okay, so 69% agree and 24% are here to learn more. So that's really cool. I hope that people are not answering what they think is the right question. So we'll delve deeper into that. Can we move on to the next question?
Absolutely. Okay, next question being, did this one. Okay.
So at what career point should leaders start developing their emotional intelligence? Is it at the early stage, mid-career? Perhaps you don't think it's needed, or it's different for everyone.
Answers are streaming in. Okay, let's give it 10 more seconds.
Okay, interesting result. Clear winner at the early stage with 83%. And next up is 15% that says that it's different for everyone. That's really interesting. I'll share my opinion later. Is there one more question?
Yes, I think there was one more for this round.
We can finish this one quickly so that we can move on. Okay, so this one is, have you practiced mindfulness before? So this is of personal interest to me because I'm a mindfulness teacher, and alongside other methods of improving emotional intelligence, such as, let's say, going to psychotherapy or exercising, I believe that mindfulness is also an important skill that leaders need to develop. So can we close this poll now? Yeah, let's see the results. Okay, so 58% of us say that they have practiced mindfulness. That's amazing. 30% haven't, and mindful or mindfulness, I'm not sure which is which. Well, we'll go into that today as well. Okay, great. So that gives us a good foundation to dig a little bit deeper into emotional intelligence in the workplace. So let's just start with the basics. What is emotional intelligence? So it's the ability to identify and regulate one's emotions and understanding of others' emotions. And a high EQ helps you to build relationships, reduce stress, diffuse conflict, and improve your job satisfaction. There are 5 aspects or elements to emotional intelligence. That's self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. And so why are we talking about this today? I think that in the healthcare industry, We've known for a long time that mental health was an increasing health concern for populations around the world. But that has really been exacerbated by the pandemic. So if you think about people living in isolation, not being able to move around, be concerned about your health, being concerned about the health of others, having to care for children at home while working, I think we can all agree that it was a lot. And so I think the time the time is now that employees cannot ignore that emotional intelligence is a concern and is something that needs to be addressed. We need to be addressing and seeing our staff members as whole people, not only people who arrive at 9 and leave at 5, or who arrive and leave every day, and we walk around with our whole selves, and our emotions and our physical being is part of that. Okay, so starting with the hard facts, where do we see emotional intelligence or a lack of emotional intelligence appearing at work? So the first one is the one I think is most well known. It's absenteeism. So that's when people don't show up for work or they are applying for sick leave. The second is something that's not very well known. It's called presenteeism, which is when somebody is at work, but they are not being productive, or they're not being as productive as they should be. So people are behind their desks or behind the computer or on the shop floor, but they are not executing the job to the best of their ability, and perhaps and they're not meeting your expectation either. And then lastly, it's with turnover, which we know is also an expensive exercise to be spending time on recruiting all the time and training and retraining people. And research tells us that there are certain employee groups that are at a higher risk, and that is youth. So anyone between 18 and 35, employees with care responsibilities, key workers, and then ethnic minorities. And so, Arman, I think we can go to our next poll.
Of course.
So if we have to quantify this, this is research from the UK. Approximately how much did mental health cost employers in the UK last year? And there is definitely a right answer here. Okay, how are we looking with the answers? Okay, so 59% of us chose 53 billion pounds. That is correct. And that's a lot of the measurement is in the opportunity cost of employing people, but particularly with absenteeism and presenteeism, they're not fulfilling their portfolio. Aman, we can ask the next question. Of the three mental health costs between absenteeism, presenteeism, and labor turnover, which is the highest cost?
I don't know. I would say absenteeism, but maybe also, I don't know. I would say the first one, but I'm just guessing here.
No, that's usually the answer. Okay, so absenteeism 38%, presenteeism 23%, and labor turnover 39%. So that's interesting. Clearly, there's a lot of debate about that. And so the answer is presenteeism. We have people at work who are not being productive. And so if we have to look at what that costs us in South Africa, you can see the figures there. There's a huge loss in productivity due to mental health, meaning low emotional intelligence. So as managers and leaders in the workplace, what are the red flags? How do we spot if somebody is producing low productivity, and when should you be concerned? So the first one is lower levels of productivity. That's not to say that somebody might be kind of a low output employee, but if you sense or you see a drastic drop in productivity, that is a red flag. Then looking at attention to detail and the number of mistakes somebody might be making, or the lower standard of work, that's really important. There's some interesting studies in the kind of manufacturing sector about emotional intelligence relating to feeling present. And there's a correlation between not feeling present and an increase in injuries in factories. So there's a lack of care about results and output, either starting very late on a task or finishing very early, surprisingly. And then this one I think is important, is putting in more hours but producing less. So if you're seeing a staff member who's online or sending Slack messages at all hours of the morning, that is a red flag. If your expectation is that they should be able to fulfill their work within working hours, that is a concern. And I mean, there's an allowance for if somebody maybe likes to work odd hours, or there might be more on their plates, but yeah, the longer, I think, we have our laptops open for many, many hours of the day, but we're not actually being productive. And so I think there's a correlation between working more but producing less. And then very obviously looking tired in virtual meetings is also something you can be aware of. Okay, looking at a few results that is relevant to some of us here. So there's some really interesting research available and recent research from Namibia and South Africa. So the first is a study on work engagement among employees in Windhoek, Namibia. I think there were about 130 respondents in the survey at 3 organizations in the country, in Windhoek. And there you can see that, social skills, growth opportunities, advancement opportunities are all linked to work engagement. And so within that, social skills speaks to emotional intelligence, and work engagement speaks to productivity. And here they also speak about a very important part of accessing resources, which is to make resources available to your team members. So being able to access support structures is probably the biggest barrier for both team members as well as staff. And then another study I thought that was interesting, specifically in the customer service industry in South Africa. We know that, being in customer service is hard work and it's taxing. And with a high score on emotional intelligence, you have greater empathy for yourself and also your customers. Okay, where do we start? So I'd like to propose starting, or at least considering, two things. The first is looking at flexible working hours, especially when staff are ill or they are overwhelmed, and really nipping things in the bud. So if you've sensed that somebody is feeling overwhelmed, we know now that they might be present at work, but they're not actually producing anything. So let them take a few hours off work, and hopefully that'll allow them to be more productive when they are back at their desk. I think that I know that that is quite a kind of a mental shift in how we approach productivity. But yeah, instead of paying people to be behind their desks and not producing, you could rather give them some time off to rest, or support them further in their task, maybe unpack things if they're feeling overwhelmed, and help them kick off a task. Then reviewing sick leave policies is also a place to start. Implementing work from home absenteeism policies. And then lastly, and this is also a bit of a mind shift, is valuing output over time input. So this doesn't apply if you're working in a hospital. I see lots of my former colleagues from Mediclinic online. This applies for knowledge workers, let's say. So yes, being online and available from 9 to 5 is important, but more important is what is your staff producing and what is the quality of that output, instead of valuing them being available and behind their laptops. Then we need to consider building a toolkit of resources for staff. And there are, for bigger companies, there are well-established employee assistance programs, and those are available. They are quite expensive for smaller enterprises, but there are more and more initiatives available for smaller companies to tap into. I would also like to add that as leaders or line managers, there are also specific skills that you need to develop. So the one is to firstly lead by example. So if you are ending off for the day, actually switching your computer off, or if you are spending time with your family, being quite diligent and not checking work emails. Leading by example is really important, and it gives permission to the rest of your team to also have time out and invest in themselves and the rest of their lives. You can also reassure staff that mental health is a priority, and train and encourage managers to lead by example. Okay, then these are some really interesting, and I added the slide, Armand, for all your digital followers. So these are all very interesting companies offering services in kind of digital health. And I'm a big fan of all of them. The first is Insight Timer. And Insight Timer is an Australian company. They have an app which you can download for free. And they have thousands of courses for mental health in the workplace, and lots of meditations if you want to kind of start out and learn how to meditate. They do have a paid for section, and they're constantly improving their service offerings. So I think last year they started an offering to companies. So this, when we talk about building a toolkit for your staff, this is a potential option. Getting a subscription to Insight Timer and making that available to your staff. There are many other meditation apps such as Headspace and Calm. You can try all of them, but I do think that the value proposition from Insight Timer is excellent in terms of value for money and the resources that are available. Then there's Kina Health, which is a product from Healthforce based in Johannesburg, and they are bringing digital health services at a very reasonable cost. They are going through kind of lots of rounds of VC funding at the moment. So yeah, they are definitely ones to watch. Migro is also an app available, and it tackles emotional intelligence for teams. They're based in Cape Town. The UX is not great, but I do think that they are on the right track, and their clients do speak very highly of them. And then we have FloatPays, also from Cape Town. They are tackling financial wellness, and they're doing really incredible work. I would really encourage you to check them out. And if you would like an introduction to the team, I'd be happy to bridge that gap for you. They're also app-based, and they are allowing staff to access part of their current salary. So, and that's in response to the high lending rates we have. And we know that loan sharks are really exploiting people who are already vulnerable. So they're tackling that industry. And then lastly, we have Grounded right at the bottom there, where I am offering mental wellness programs to staff. And I'm tackling some of those vulnerable groups, so the key staff areas who might be suffering more from mental illness or a lack of emotional intelligence. So particularly emerging leaders and senior leaders, so helping to kind of grow our ability to be empathetic towards ourselves and our staff. So if anybody is interested or would like to know more about some of the research I've shared today, I'd be happy to share that with you. You're welcome to contact me in any way listed here. And yeah, I'm interested to hear about your questions and any comments you have.
Super. Thank you so much, Nadia. That was very insightful. Definitely learned a lot from my side today. So do please come forward. Thanks for being a great audience thus far. I see lots of great comments, but now really is the time to hit the Q&A button. So let us know if there are any questions, in particular to Nadia, but also to us at V5 Digital. And we are more than happy to at the very least, attempt to answer them. Maybe I can, since it's a bit quiet on the Q&A, maybe I can ask a question from my side, Nadia. Can you measure emotional intelligence? Is there a quick tool, or is it difficult to measure? Is it very subjective or objective? Maybe you can share that with us.
Yes, there are actually many tools to measure emotional intelligence. And it really came to the fore in the early 90s as a kind of section of psychology. And yeah, so there are a couple of tests. I don't know of any that are like the Myers-Briggs test necessarily. But I won't be surprised if something comes out very soon, if we see how much people are spending and investing in the emotional intelligence.
Super, thank you. I see there's a question from Cats Namibia, and I see it is not completely written out. Here we go. I'm going to read it off, Nadia, in case you do not see it. How can the topic of emotional intelligence be explained to individuals in the most simple way?
Thank you, Cats Namibia. That's a very good question. So if I have to explain it in plain English, it would be our emotions and being able to identify your emotions as they arise. So, for example, before this webinar, I was a little nervous, and I could pause and notice that I was a little nervous. I was a little hot. Maybe my heartbeat was a little faster than it usually is. And so having the self-awareness to be able to recognize that, oh, I'm nervous, and then being able to empower myself with tools as to how can I remedy this? How can I change my emotions now to allow myself to be present and to be my best self? And for me, that was to just take a few deep breaths, to place both feet on the ground. And that is, I mean, it's so simple, but it is so powerful. So, Cats Namibia, I hope I've answered your question. You're welcome to pose another one if something's come up.
Super. Thank you, Nadia. Next one from Thembeka Sikobi. I'm not sure if I pronounced it correctly, but the question is, how do you bring up emotional intelligence in a work environment that doesn't see the value of it?
Sure, this is a very big challenge. Thanks, Thembeka, for your question. I would argue that if you have an employer who doesn't get it, which I think is still very prevalent, I would argue that you need to do it for yourself. And so these are skills and tools that we would use not only in the workplace, but also in our lives. It's unfortunate that people are not investing more in this.
Thank you. Rebecca, I hope that answered your question. If not, please do ask another one. We've got one from Maxine Schaefer. The question is, maybe I missed your answer. At what stage should leaders develop their EQ as leaders?
Yes, I didn't answer that question. Thank you, Maxine, for bringing that up. So there were two correct answers. The one is definitely the earlier, the better. And I think something like emotional intelligence needs to be addressed at school level. Getting children to be able to identify their emotions in that moment is incredibly powerful, and being able to grow up with that skill would be amazing. So early stage in career, but in life as well. But keeping in mind that it is a different time for everyone. This is really hard, introspective work that needs to be done. And it's not always the right time for everyone. So I wouldn't, for example, force employees or make it mandatory for people to access or utilize tools that you make available in the workplace. They need to recognize that this is an area of opportunity, and they need to then take the step and initiative to go further. Is EQ a soft skill? I don't think so. If we look at the numbers, if we look at what this is costing, our bottom line, our GDP, and if we look at even from an economics perspective, if we look at productivity of a workforce, in South Africa, I know that is decreasing. So this is really costing us a lot of money. And I think instead of trying to find new solutions or taking a systems approach, finding some kind of technology workaround to be more efficient, we can also look towards our people and trying to support them to be better.
Super, thank you for that. There's quite a few questions, which is great. A question from Leonora Lowe is, what are the most important emotional intelligence skills which leaders must have?
Thank you. That's a great question. I would say the ability to empathize and the ability to be present. If you are a leader and you are not present for yourself and your team, then you are not serving your team. And when it comes to empathy, we are all such diverse people, and being able to connect with somebody else, no matter their circumstances, makes us human and allows us to see each other as our whole selves.
Super, that's really insightful. Thank you for that, Nadia. I think that also would help me a lot to go through that answer again. A question from Dr. Slim Turkey. We actually, the two of us spoke earlier this week on Zoom. So Dr. Slim Turkey is based in Luxembourg, and the question is, inflation and the risk of unemployment are already weighing on the morale of many people, and the pressure is likely to increase rapidly. What approach do you recommend to keep teams motivated?
Thank you. Absolutely. Inflation is, it's very real for all of us. And so recommended to teams, I think, starts with acknowledging that all these things are affecting us, right? So having the approach of like, our workplace is a bubble and we're just carrying on, is not being in touch with reality. So start with acknowledging and then really just check in with your staff as to where they are and how these things are affecting them. It might be things that you don't actually see. So it might be that somebody in their household has lost their job now, or there are greater expenses because of inflation. I would start with a human approach and really being aware as a leader of those red flags. Do people look more fatigued at work? Are they being less productive? And reaching out and showing that you care.
Super, thank you. Then one more from, I'm not sure if it's Mr. or Miss Nderua. Is EI important at management level or junior level, or both?
I would argue that it is. If I had to choose between management and junior, I would say management, because we need management to lead by example. Emotional intelligence can be cultivated. It's something that can be developed, but it starts with our leaders who lead from the front.
Super, thank you. A question from Thiago. Thiago Raffo, I know, is joining us from Spain today. So the question is, how can I improve EI of my team members being a leader without negative impact without the negative impact it could possibly provoke?
Tiago, I'm not sure that I understand. Are you saying that talking about our emotions might be too much to handle, or people might become even less productive? If that's what you're saying, then my answer to that is that it's happening anyway. Our people are already in that situation, and you're not necessarily saying that you're going to solve their problems, but what we can do is create an environment of understanding, and you become a better manager. If somebody is going through a difficult time, it might be a very practical thing, like they need to now pick up their children from school because they can't afford to pay for transport. It might just allow you to be more helpful and understanding, and for you to not be frustrated with your team member when they're not around.
Thanks, Nadia. I see Tiago did pose or kind of put more context to it. He said an example could be a team member that is not productive.
I am a big fan of holding people accountable, Tiago. So if it's one person, please don't address the whole team. You gotta go directly to the source and be brave and have that conversation.
Great. Four more questions thus far. They're streaming in, which is fantastic. We've got about 10 minutes to go. I see one or two people had to drop off already, which isn't a problem. So as you know, the webinar is being recorded and you will receive a recording by Friday, 1 p.m. So a question from Nikki is, from what age can you start emotional intelligence coaching with children? If everyone is more emotionally intelligent, wouldn't that improve work environments exponentially?
Emphasis, Nikki, on exponentially. Absolutely. So there are many ways of introducing emotional intelligence skills to children. I would say the friendliest and the funnest and the most beautiful way is with yoga. So yoga classes for children are quite different to the ones that we as adults access. And it is all about emotional regulation. So being able to identify that I'm feeling frustrated. What does that feel like? Let's put a name to it. And there's some really beautiful tools and exercises that yoga teachers use when they teach children.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Amal Sali is asking, is improving the bottom line approach the best way to convince reluctant leaders to cultivate EQ in their workplace?
Wow, Amal. I think we got to try every option possible. I do think, I don't believe in radical change, particularly in leaders. But what I do believe in is sowing seeds. And so using research like the research I've shared with you today, hopefully plants a seed somewhere in a leader's mind. And hopefully that'll grow further. To expect somebody to change their minds overnight is not realistic. So hopefully the bottom line approach is a harder approach. Instead of saying that emotional intelligence is a soft skill and we need to all start singing Kumbaya around a fireplace.
Super. Next question from Ashleen Brederveld. What can employees do to subtly guide their reluctant leaders to become more emotionally intelligent? Any phrases that would be helpful?
Ashley, you're asking difficult questions. So no phrases come to mind. But I would look at your leader, understand what motivates them, and understand how we can potentially incorporate some form of emotional intelligence into the way they live their lives already. So if, for example, your leader's a runner, making them aware of the mental health benefits of running would be a good place to start.
Super. We've got two more thus far, but you're more than welcome to ask one or two more questions. Uwe asks, hello Nadia, great talk. Do you know of examples of companies or sectors that place a higher focus on EI for employee selection and development?
I do know that it is done, I think, generally, especially in senior leadership positions, that becomes more of a focus. But I do think that this is something that an organization and their values need to align with. So if it's not kind of in the culture of the company, it's not going to be there. I know that an example is Vodacom. They have initiatives, again, targeting some of those key stakeholders for development. So, for example, developing women in their workplace is really important. And so they have specific initiatives to grow their emotional intelligence. I also know of a law firm who have invested significantly in incorporating this into their recruitment process.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Last one, it seems, Cats Namibia. Again, how do you build EI when people are not in touch with their emotions? For example, only being able to point out that the feeling is bad or good, not being able to specify, for instance, frustrated or overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because you also don't want to tell the employee what you are seeing, but you do want to support them. So I would skip the part of naming what you're seeing and offer the support. Having said that, I think it's a continuous conversation that you have with your staff members, because they really do need to be in the right headspace to be able to take this on. And that cannot be forced. I would suggest bringing this up in a performance review, because we often focus on our technical skills and not necessarily our leadership skills, or which encompasses emotional intelligence. So I definitely think that is the right time to bring it up. And again, taking that approach of you're planting seeds, and hopefully that'll grow. But yeah, overnight change in people, it's not sustainable.
Super. Thank you for that, Nadia. It seems to other people are very well mannered and do not ask any more questions because time is almost up. Or there are in fact no more questions. So, but please, if you do have questions either for Nadia or for ourselves, you do have our details. I think especially you're more than welcome to reach out to Nadia and Ground it for any consultations or sessions which you and your team might need or require going forward. So please do make use of the opportunity. I see there is maybe one more question or not. No, there isn't. All right. So with that, I'm going to close the Q&A, but at the same time, would like to encourage you and invite you, should there be any more questions, then please feel free to reach out via email. And with that, I'm about to close the webinar, but also at the same time would like to introduce our next webinar. The good and the bad thing is we do not have a topic as yet, but we do have a date, as we always do with V5 Africa. It always runs middle of the month, middle of the week, middle of the day, so it's easy to remember. And our next one will be on the Wednesday, the 14th of September. We are currently in touch with a few potential keynote speakers and topics, but if you've got anything, or if you think you are the keynote speaker for our next V5 Africa, please do reach out to us. You do have our details, and or you might know someone within your network or someone that you believe you've maybe listened to before. Please do come forward. We are definitely looking for an amazing keynote speaker, as Nadia was, for our next V5 Africa webinar, and just let us know, and then we will schedule that accordingly. So with that, I'm about to close the webinar. Remember, the recording you will have in your inbox by Friday, 1 p.m. And if you maybe missed this webinar, or your colleague that signed up don't see him or her here today, then please do let them know that they will receive the recording by Friday. And just a word of thanks from us, from the core team, myself and Jonathan and Jürgen, who were the kind of the behind the scenes guys for the webinar. A big thank you again for all your help and assistance. And with that, I would like to close V5 Africa. Thank you all. Have an amazing Wednesday. And I would say Wednesday afternoon, but if you were joining us from elsewhere, from a different time zone, enjoy the rest of your evening or the rest of your morning. And Nadia, again, thank you so much for being here today. We believe it's an extremely important and relevant topic in today's world. And we're absolutely amazed by your talk and by your just kind of sharing all your knowledge and insights. And again, a big thank you from our side, from all of us at V5 Digital.
Such a pleasure. Thank you very much.